what do you propose we do now?
Well, I just had the greatest brainwashing that anybody can get.
Brain surgery, psychosurgery, creation of amnesia,
They do about very good job.
parapsychology, manipulation of genes.
Despite that fact, we're there, we are involved, we have created this into a conflict that is now a test between communism and freedom.
To tell you the complete story that we know.
You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. You need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. No need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. I see the ways we've been getting played on a daily basis. Most people are afraid, so they going through their paces. Usually they make it without leaving any traces, believing that they made it but won't see that on their faces. This is a hot topic, like Miami eating faces. Zombies put in place government indoctrination. You wanna make it out, better make the preparations. 2012 won't be the end, so no early celebrations. Television seditation sells a minute hesitation, long enough to have the Constitution shredded and degraded. Meanwhile, celebrities, they have you starstruck, spaced out, Star Trek, hopped up, Starbucks, reality TV. In reality is far from what's real. It's been put there to keep you all dumb. Brainwash the populace. You better start young to ensure that revolutions, they never start up. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. You need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. No need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. We need to teach and build, reach beyond ourselves and help to breach the veil of secrecy. The secrets that they keep affecting me, directing me towards a darkness I have yet to see. But luckily I share the likeness of a Jesus piece. I got my faith intact but far from a Jesus freak. Split religion lineage like colors on piano keys. No call for action, they're calling in the cavalry. Don't act surprised, act according to the battle scene. The tragedy is they desensitize you gradually, and actually you'll sacrifice yourself happily. The writing's on the wall, painted like art of war. Portrait of a corporation right before it's about to fall. The empire of America is stretched thin. Drone strikes for Muslims, amnesty for Mexicans. They made it so, now you'll think that I'm a racist. But really it's so you will agree to show your payment. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. You need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. No need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. Gestapo tactics, break back like chiropractics. The pressure's too much, flip out like acrobatics. Skip man and act sporadic. This man is added up to here. Mass murder overseas, you're bitching about the Buccaneers. Drown inside your fucking tears, suckers like a couple queers. Suffer for a moment and you claim it was a couple years. Masquerading as a macho man, but you're not. And my mind isn't contraband, cause it's not. If I speak my mind, I'm a traitor, but really I'm a patriot. Liberty, you're trading it. Either way, they're taking it, so people need to get a grip. Turn the news off, history will tell you about this shit. It happens once, happens twice, then repeats again. Romans and Sumerians, Nazis and Americans. Empires crumble because power is a flaw of man. If we stand together, we can never ever fall again. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. You need to fall in line, it's time to free your mind. You need to free your mind, cause you're running out of time. The picture's getting clearer, the higher that we climb. The further you walk with them, the more you feel divine. No to fall in line. It's time to free your mind.
We are not professing to tell you the complete story of these activities. We are professing to tell you the complete story that we know. But these records that we've uncovered don't tell the story. They tell pieces of it.
This is a story that has been told in bits and pieces. This is an attempt to pull most of it together. We know we don't have the full story. We do, however, have some striking new revelations and insights.
What is up? Welcome back. Welcome back. It is Seymour Mac. I am Mike Brown, owner of Seymour Mac Productions. And welcome back to the weekly live stream. I committed this year to doing at least one live stream per week. We're going to discuss personal topics, professional topics. Some stuff will have to do with video production, some entrepreneurship, some just personal experience. Last week, I shared on my Instagram and I believe on Facebook as well, a podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast. He had former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, on, and W. Brian Hubbard on there to speak about ibogaine. Now, ibogaine is not something that I've ever done before. It is not something that I have experience with, but they did mention, let me catch an audio. Yep. They did mention ayahuasca. Now, this is something that I do have experience with. So now going into today's podcast, I just want to say, or today's live stream, I do want to say that this is not an advocation for drug use of any sort. You do what you want. This is really just for educational purposes. And really, this is just me sharing what my experience is with ayahuasca specifically. I don't do drugs anymore. I used to do a lot of drugs in my younger days, a lot of psychedelics, acid, mushrooms, a lot of smoking weed. The smoking weed thing lasted quite a long time, probably far longer than it should have. But I've been sober now from marijuana for over a year. I believe November 20th was the last day that of the previous year was when I stopped smoking, and I've been clean off of that ever since. I don't really drink anymore. Stopped kind of drinking when we're having family get-togethers. My older brother's sober, battling his own addiction issues. My father's been sober for like 35 years. And I just realized that it wasn't a conducive environment at Thanksgiving when everybody's drinking. I kind of realized that my dad would migrate to the front porch and then he would just disappear because, frankly, he wasn't comfortable being around it. And I don't blame him. So that kind of started that with fitness, also at the same time, started me down the journey of weaning off of drinking. And now it's very, very rare that I drink at all. If I drink, it's like a 4-day recovery system that I just don't have the time for. So very interesting. I was spending some time at the beginning of the live stream trying to update the information on the post because I realized after it was too late that it was the same information from the very first live stream I did, um, welcome to the first live stream of the year. So I'm just updating that on Facebook, and I am going to update that on the YouTube stream as well. So there we go. All right. So again, this is for educational purposes only. Now, this is kind of, I don't want to say a risky move, but when we're talking about drug use, psychedelics, especially in the business world, there is a lot of stigma. So, first of all, we're going to cover a couple topics today. I am not a scientist anymore. I'm not a doctor anymore. So take what I say with a grain of salt. We'll look at some actual information here, but I want to talk a little bit about what ayahuasca is, my experience with it, how it's helped me personally and professionally, and the social and professional stigma around psychedelics. Now, I mentioned at the top of the stream the podcast that I shared last week. And if you haven't already listened to it or watched it, I highly suggest that you go and check out the Joe Rogan Experience. It was an episode from last week with Rick Perry and W. Brian Hubbard talking about ibogaine. Now, in this podcast, Mr. Hubbard is extremely knowledgeable on the uses of ibogaine. I'm not going to try to remember or repeat the entirety of that podcast, but when you listen to it, you're going to figure out really quickly that this isn't some random hippie guy. This is like an upstanding member of his community. He's actually a conservative, and the stigma that surrounds this kind of topic is something that he speaks about in that as well. But he talks about its use case when trying to implement it in Kentucky to battle the opioid addiction. And ibogaine has a wide use, or I should say, is predominantly used for treating addiction. So, drug addiction, opioid addiction, alcohol addiction, all sorts of addictions. It's that rewiring of the brain that it has an effect on, and also PTSD, specifically in veterans, coming back from war. So, extremely impactful and powerful podcast. I implore everybody to go take a listen, whether you're this kind of thing or not. It is very knowledgeable. We all know somebody who's dealing with drug addiction, alcohol addiction. We all know somebody who has been overseas to war and come back not the same person. This is an extremely powerful and informational podcast for that. So go check that out. Now, in that podcast, they mentioned ayahuasca. The reason why I posted about it was, one, I wanted to share that podcast because I thought it was powerful, but I also saw it as an opportunity for me. It kind of just sparked some interest in me in doing this week's live stream on this topic as well, but not about ibogaine because I know nothing really about ibogaine, more about ayahuasca. So I want to talk a little bit about how I've used ayahuasca, going over the past, a little bit over the year or so. I've done it only a handful of times, two different ceremonies, 2 nights each. So I guess I've done it 4 times in total. But we count the ceremonies. I'll count the ceremonies as a one time, right? So 2 different times. So I want to talk a little bit about what my experience has been with it and the effect that it's had on me in my personal life and in my professional life. I'm going to talk more about the professional side. I don't want to get too much into the personal stuff. I will touch on some stuff, but I'm not going to go into detail on a lot of it. First things first, though, I think it's probably important to even to to look at what the heck is. Holy smokes! I turned into a ghost. What is ayahuasca, right? So I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me. Bearing with me. Okay, let's share this. Bear with me also as I'm turn into a ghost. Okay. Um, let's make sure my audio is going. If you happen to be catching this live stream on Facebook or on YouTube, please drop me a comment in the chat. Let me know you're here. Let me know you're alive. And let me know if you have any interest in this topic at all. Um, I don't know how much I'm going to continue to do topics like this in the future, but we'll see what happens. All right. So, what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a plant-based psychedelic. Psychedelics affect all the senses, altering a person's thinking, sense of time, and emotions. They can cause a person to hallucinate, seeing or hearing things that do not exist or are distorted. I'm going to read it from up here. Actually, it's a little bit bigger. Ayahuasca is a decoction. It's a concentrated liquid made by prolonged heating or boiling of the. I'm going to screw this up now, the Banisteriopsis capi vine with the leaves of the Psychotria viridis shrub. So basically, a vine and a shrub which is found in the Amazon jungle. And from what I understand from the shamans that I have done ceremonies with, this goes back thousands and thousands of years. They have no idea how anybody even discovered this because where the vine is and where the plant leaf is are they don't grow in the same spot. So they grow in completely different places, potentially tens or hundreds or thousands of miles apart. I don't know. Don't quote me on that one. But very, very far apart. So it's a mystery on how somebody even discovered this. So they boil the vine with the leaf of the shrub, and although there can be a variety of other plants included in the decoction for different traditional purposes, the active chemical in ayahuasca is DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. It also contains monoamine oxidase inhibitors, the MAOIs. Jesus Christmas. Can you tell I'm not a scientist or a doctor? So basically, ayahuasca has been used for centuries by First Nations people from the contemporary Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador for religious, ritual, and therapeutic uses. So I want to go down here a little bit. This talks a little bit about, use of any drug can have risks, of course. It will have different effects on you depending on how many times you've used it, what your experience has been with it, such as tolerance levels, for example, your size, your weight, your body composition, also what you've been eating leading into ceremony has a big effect on it. You can see here some of the effects of ayahuasca. First of all, I will just say from personal experience, lots of hallucinating for sure. And I'll dive more into what that experience is actually like to the best of my ability. If you haven't done it before or a psychedelic before, it's going to be very hard to maybe understand some of it, but I will try to explain it in my own experience and in my own words. But you will hallucinate, you will see things, you will receive messages, you will ask questions and get answers to them. It does a wide variety of things, and you will, in most cases, vomit or what we call purging. And I'll explain a little bit of how I feel like that works in the actual moment. What I wanted to do before we close this page out is look at the long term effects. So, ayahuasca does not appear to have any negative impact on the body. Existing research indicates the long term use of ayahuasca is not associated with loss of cognitive functioning or negative mental health outcomes. All right. Ayahuasca is not something that you are going to get addicted to. Okay. First of all, let me say that. It is not, I think, much like Ibogaine, although Ibogaine, I believe, is a much more extreme, intense experience in most cases. This is not something like smoking weed or like a social drug that you are going to get addicted to and want to do day in and day out. It is actually not even really possible for you to do that. Okay. First and foremost. So we covered a little bit about what ayahuasca is specifically. Um, so I want to share a little bit of my experience with it. I was introduced to ayahuasca by a friend of mine. I'm not going to really say any names here because although we've talked about it publicly before, I don't I haven't like pre-gamed this with anybody, so I don't want to put names out there. But good friend of mine brought it up to me. It was something that I had heard before on different podcasts, something that I learned about a little bit. Didn't know much about it, but was very interested in exploring it, not even using, but just learning more about it on paper. And then my friend um, said, "Hey, I did this a few times. Here's what it did for me. Is this something that you have been interested in?" And of course, I was at that time. So I want to say not this past August, the one before. So the August of 2023 is the first time that I did an ayahuasca ceremony. I, at that time, was dealing with a lot of personal stuff, you know, and going into it, of course, I fully expected to confront some of those things and deal with some of those things during the ceremony. But I was also at that time really kind of moving forward with this business, with my business, right? And the title of this stream is Can Ayahuasca Help Your Business Growth? So I do want to try to connect it and lean it more towards those experiences. The the very first ceremony that I did with ayahuasca, the first night, I drank a cup and I did not feel anything. I want to say I drank another cup after a period of time, and Still did not feel anything. And I was doing it with a small group of people, about 8 people or so, and it was being facilitated by the people who lived there, uh, husband and a wife, and one of their kids, older kid, and the shaman. That shaman was from Colombia, um, and they facilitate it for you. They make sure they keep an eye on you if you need any help throughout it. But typically, what happens when you're doing an ayahuasca ceremony, whether you're in a small group or a big group, you are, as long as you're okay and you seem to be fine, you could be going through a wide variety of emotions, and they will let you work it out. One of the cardinal rules with, taking part in a ceremony is, no matter what's going on with the person next to you or the person across the room, you don't really want to interfere with that. You just want to kind of stay in your own experience. Everybody is dealing with their own experiences, facing their own traumas from their life, and you don't want to interject your energy into that. So you let people go about their journey. Sometimes that can seem like a very painful journey for them or for yourself. Again, a lot of emotions, wide variety of emotions, a lot of sadness, a lot of happiness, and everything in between. Um, but that first night, I didn't really feel anything. And I think looking back on it that next morning, it was because I was very external. I was very aware of what was going on in the room. I could hear people in the room moving around, going through their experience, and I wasn't really introspective. I wasn't diving into my own experience. So that first night, I did not have any kind of like profound experience, right? The learning that I had though from that night heading into the second night was that I need to stop worrying about what's going on around me. I need to stop worrying about people's opinions, what other people's experiences are, and need to focus on my own experience. And I believe that's what held me from having my own profound experience that first night. Going into the second night, I agreed with myself and with the shaman and the medicine that I was going to surrender completely and just let it take me on my journey. And the second night was very much not like the not like the first night. If you've ever done psychedelics before, maybe mushrooms or LSD, then you've had a very heavy trip. It is very much attuned to that. Times, give it a multiplier. Okay. Um, that second night, I was on a completely different journey than that first night. I had my own experience. I wasn't so concerned about what was going on around me, although you are very aware. It's not like one of these things where you're just completely out of it and you don't know what the hell is going on. You are aware of what's going on in the room around. You could open your eyes and look around. You could see what's happening. Matter of fact, you're actually, in most cases, journaling while you're going through your experience so you don't forget anything, and you could jot down questions or things that you're learning. So it is very much of a learning experience. Um, I was dealing with a lot of personal stuff at that time, and the medicine, what it seems to do is much like what I think ibogaine does for addiction, and PTSD, is it really does bring you to the thing that you have to deal with. Maybe something you've been avoiding, maybe something you've been pretending wasn't a problem. Maybe it's something you're not even really aware of. It could be something that happened in your childhood that you have completely removed from your memory. The medicine will find that thing and bring you right to it and force you to deal with it. And that's kind of what happens. That's what happened with me. It forced me to deal and confront with a lot of stuff. And it was a very powerful experience. The hallucinating portion of it was, you see a lot of visuals. So again, if you've done psychedelics, you've seen, the rainbow grid, you've seen the patterns, you've seen the colors. I mean, these things were happening on a degree that I've never experienced before with anything. And the colors were so freaking bright that they were loud. Like, they were so visually bright that I had to cover my ears to stop from being blinded from them. That's what it seemed like when it was going on. That's how intense it was. But then I started asking questions along my experience, and I was receiving answers, which was kind of crazy. So you're jotting those things down. After I had that experience, that was all off the first cup. A few hours later, or an hour or two later, the shaman may call people up and say, hey, if you want to take another cup, you can come up for another cup. You take another cup. I took a second cup, and I thought I would dive deeper into dealing with my issues. But instead, the medicine said, hey, buddy, you did a great job. You did plenty of work. Enjoy the ride. And for the rest of that night, I enjoyed the ride. I came out of that first experience with a lot of awareness on who I thought I was, who I wanted to be, why I was so concerned with the way other people perceived me, and how that was holding me back in my personal life, but also my professional life. It helped me in a lot of ways with my business growth in that period, because at that time I was having a lot of um, imposter syndrome. I was having a lot of self doubt. I wasn't pushing myself as hard as I could because I was so worried about what other people would think of me. And that was holding me back. It was a major limiting factor, not just in my personal life, but in my professional life. So it helped me immensely at that time. The following December, again, this is of 2023, I did a second ceremony with a different group. This was a shaman that was from Peru. Uh, a much different experience, a large group. It was about 30 people in this room. We were packed in tightly like sardines, but it was a bigger room, and it was by a fireplace. And my experience there was intense. Leading into that, my older brother, Brian, was supposed to join me on it to deal with his own demons. But unfortunately, his wife had lost their child 19 weeks into her pregnancy, and obviously he wasn't going to leave her side. He had to stay with her and kind of deal with the grieving and doing that. That was about a week or two before we were supposed to head to that ceremony. Um, and at that time, I didn't really deal with it as well. I didn't deal with the loss of my nephew, maybe because I was disconnected enough from it where, like, it didn't have an immediate impact on my emotions. But I remember that happening to us personally, many, many, many years ago. And it was hard. It was hard for my wife. I mean, it was extremely hard for my wife. It was hard for me. I don't think I expressed that eloquently at that time. But my brother going through his experience reminded me of that. Then I went into ceremony. And the first night I went there without my friend this time. I was going there solo, and I was pretty scared. I wasn't going to know anybody. He was kind of my safety blanket on that first round. And I didn't know what to expect. Um, in that first night, that experience, again, I was very fearful of the large group. I was very unsure of it. I didn't know how that would affect my experience, if it would make it more enjoyable or more of a learning experience, or if it would just make it too intense or crazy or distracting. And I remember just again agreeing to surrender myself to the experience, to the medicine. What an intense experience that was. On the personal side, um, I don't know how long into the experience, but let's just call it a few hours in. I could hear the shaman talking from across the room, and I can't really make out what he's saying because one, he's speaking Spanish, and I don't really know any Spanish. Um, and also, but I could tell that he was speaking to me, and he was talking about my brother. They were aware of the situation. He was talking about my brother and his wife losing their baby. And then the woman who was facilitating it said some words in English so I could hear those. And that's when I knew for sure that this message was about, you know, my brother's situation, and it was meant for me. In that moment, I was forced to deal with grieving, grieving that, and grieving, my wife those many years back having a miscarriage of her own and losing what would have been our second child. And the energy, that emotion, you could tell that in 30 people around the room going through this experience. I don't know any of these people. I mean, I was crying. I mean, you want to talk about crying? I was crying like a little baby. Everybody was crying. That emotion was felt throughout the room, and it was a very communal grieving experience. I felt their energy, their support. Um, and I think maybe some of them had lost children of their own, family members of their own, just going through their own grief, and it impacted them as well. It helped them find closure in their own grieving, in their own situations. It was an experience that I have never felt before. I want to go back to how I just explained it, was the communal healing aspect of it. Let's imagine thousands of years ago in these First Nations, as that page called it, communities, right? Those Amazon tribes where they're finding ayahuasca, they're experimenting with it, they're using it to heal and to have these experiences. Think about just without ayahuasca, just think about, that far back in all parts of the world where these tribal communities helped each other go through experiences to grow and to heal and to it was a shared experience, and that's what I felt. It was amazing. There's a lot more to that second ceremony and that experience that I went through that would be very hard for me to explain. um, I spent a little bit of time with Jesus and the disciples. I spent a little bit of time at the edge of a cave with a family unit much like mine, a man, a woman, and a child, hundreds of thousands of years back, potentially sitting in a cave by a fire, sharing love. And I think what I got out of that second round, that second ceremony, was to remember where we all come from and to remember that this is all built on love. Everything in our society, everything in our existence started with that notion of love, and that's kind of what that brought me back to. um, Coming out of that second experience, it kind of just reaffirmed what I learned in the first one, and especially in regard to running my business and feeling so uncertain at that time. Ayahuasca helped me level up because I was so much more aware of myself and my purpose and what I wanted to do, not just in my personal life, but with this business, and the effect that I wanted to have on people, and that underlying theme of love and sharing the talents, what few talents I may have been given, to share those with my, business partners and my clients and the people in my community, and use it as a force of good, right? Of course, it's a business. I have a family to feed. I have a mortgage to pay. I'm trying to make money with this business. It needs to be profitable. Of course, there's that financial element of it, but it's no longer the main purpose, and it really never was. I mean, I just need enough to pay the bills and survive and not owe $10,000 in taxes, hopefully at the end of the year. But I needed those experiences to reaffirm the true purpose behind why I decided to take this leap of faith into starting my own video production company, and why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to create value and help people, and that is the primary source of my driving force, so to speak. So that's kind of what my experience up until this point has been using ayahuasca, and how it's helped me a little bit, personally, and in my business, in my professional life. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that I mentioned early on in the live stream, which is the stigma that surrounds this. I purposely did not stream this to my LinkedIn page because I don't know how it will be accepted. And although part of me wants to say, who gives a shit? You run your own business, and like I don't have to answer to somebody to say, you can't do that, you're fired. There is still a social and a professional stigma, more so the professional stigma around psychedelics, ayahuasca, ibogaine, things of this nature, using magic mushrooms or psilocybin as a treatment. There's so much stigma around it, and it comes from a lack of understanding, right? When we fear things and when we push things to the side, it's usually because we don't understand them. So we need to take time and try to put our egos aside. We need to put our preconceived notions aside, and we have to be a little bit open minded, right? So that's what this live stream here is about. It's me taking a chance and sharing this experience live, uncut, unfiltered. Whoever sees it, sees it. These may be people that I've worked with in the past, friends, family who don't know this side of me. Um, Potential clients may see this, and this may help them decide that hey, they don't want to work with me, or they appreciate my honesty, and they also had their own experiences, and they want to work with me even more. Who the hell knows, right? The purpose of this live stream is not to get business. Let's just put it that way. I know I'm taking a risk about talking about this openly as far as business perspective goes, but we have to have these conversations, and we have to try to educate ourselves and each other on things like this, because the one thing I will tell you, and this is just my personal opinion, is after several ayahuasca ceremonies, I come out of each one of those thinking that everybody in the world, that's a huge generalization, um, can benefit from going through an ayahuasca ceremony. Obviously, not everybody. There's going to be some people that you don't really want diving into this realm. Um, of course, it comes with risks. You know, if you're already kind of prone to a psychotic break, might not be a great idea for you. Um, the problem is, I'd say consult your physician, but 10 out of 10 physicians know nothing about ayahuasca, and they certainly aren't going to tell you to go try it. So it becomes a very tricky situation where you have to do your own research. And I think probably what the best thing is to find as much actual information you can and study in the way of scientific studies, which it is very, very limited because, at least in this country, in the States, it is illegal. There's no studies going on with ayahuasca right now in the United States, at least none that I'm aware of. So finding scientific studies is going to be damn near impossible. You can find plenty of information about it, but probably your next best course of action is just talking to as many people as you can who have had experiences with ayahuasca or psychedelic treatments. Maybe it's ibogaine, maybe it's mushrooms in more of a treatment sense. Every time I did mushrooms when I was a kid, it was always with the purpose of just hanging out with my boys, walking through the woods and seeing some crazy shit. I never did it as a therapeutic or a spiritual element. I just did it as like kind of like a party drug. Um, I haven't done mushrooms in a very, very long time. I don't plan on doing mushrooms at all. But ayahuasca has been something that has impacted my life in such a positive way that I maybe there's a time where I feel like I don't need to do it anymore, but I certainly have left the last one, which was 2 Decembers ago now, feeling like I know at some point I'm going to be ready for my next ceremony. So I'm going to finish the live stream here talking about what's next, right? So actually, in I want to say next, is it next weekend? Yep. Not this weekend, but the following weekend, I'm going for my third ayahuasca ceremony in an undisclosed location. And I don't know what to expect. One thing I could say for certain is don't expect something in particular because it's not what's going to happen. But you go in with intention. Now, thank God and thank you know, they call her abuelita ayahuasca. But thank God that I am not dealing with the same level of heavy personal strife that I was on those first two ceremonies. A lot of work has been done since then, personally and myself. A lot of work still has to be done, but within those elements. So thank God that I am in a much better place in that regard. I'm also in a much better place with business. Business did well last year. So I don't know what to expect because I'm not going in with anything really super heavy in particular, but I do know that I will have the experience I'm intended to have. The one thing that I do, my intention going into it is to just get further awareness on what my purpose is. Um, Last time I prayed a lot and I read a lot of the Bible. Um, I've read a lot of scripture. I prayed a lot during the ceremony to Christ to accept me for who I am, to forgive me for my sins, and to show me a deeper connection with God. And I feel like I did get that in a lot of ways. So I'm certainly looking for that again. More of that would be fantastic. But also heading into 2025, as far as a business perspective, I'm feeling very uncertain. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just a self limiting belief, but I feel very uncertain on what the outcome of this year is going to be. How am I going to do better than I did or just as well as I did in 2024? So I'm feeling a lot of self doubt. So I'm hoping that having this experience early on in the year is going to clear some blockages up, let me work through some of those personal details, and set me up for an amazing year of awareness, of motivation and discipline, of spiritual connection, of professional and personal growth. And that's the only thing that I'm going into as far as my intention goes. So, again, if you happen to be watching this live, drop a comment in the chat. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to see it now, or if you're catching this on the replay, you see the title, you see the description, you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about this for? Who is he? Should have put a lab coat on or something. Um, Drop a comment in the chat wherever you're seeing this and let me know if you have had an experience with ayahuasca or ibogaine, what the impact on your life has been. Share some of that experience so that way others, including myself, may learn from it, and we will use that as our source of education, at least on this topic. So thank you for joining me on today's live stream. Next week, I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. I do want to try to make these more business related, entrepreneur related, maybe video related. But there are going to be times like this week where I feel compelled to speak about personal topics. And this was just one of those times. So if you got anything out of this, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video wherever you're seeing it, like it, whatever the thing is on the platform you're seeing this, and let me know, most importantly, um, what your experience has been, and share some of that with the people. All right, I will see you guys next week, and I'm planning on starting the actual podcast virtually. Of course, I want to do it in person, but I spoke about this last week. I wanted, I got to just start it. So I want to start having guests on and having one-to-one conversations with people and just hear people's stories. No specific type of person in particular or business people. It's whatever. I just want to talk to interesting people and hear their stories and see what we can learn from it. So I'm going to be launching that hopefully by the end of the month, maybe in February is a good goal for that, and have the first guest on. And I don't know, we'll probably do it live just so I don't have to edit it. I'm trying to make it easy, right? So we'll see what happens. But thank you for joining me, and hopefully you got something out of this. And I will see you next week when I say, welcome back. It's Seymour Mack.